Let's finish this short chapter on industry analysis by looking at the competitive structure of industries. We're going to ask 4 questions about the industry that will help us assess how competitive industries are. Now, I just want to say that from my personal observation that all industries are very competitive. That is the nature of capitalism, and so some of this is a little bit theoretical because there's always intense competition. But some industries are a little bit more competitive than others, and we're going to take a look at the factors that will determine how competitive industries are, what the intensity of competition is. All right, so the intensity of competition, how intense it is, has a significant bearing on the performance of an industry. Okay? Where we are in the life cycle will determine what the sales growth looks like. But the intensity of the competition will have a most significant impact on the profit margins, the profitability of the companies in the industry. Okay? So 5 competitive forces analyzed to assess the intensity of competition within an industry. And the first thing we'll look at is the rivalry or the competition among existing competitors. So you look at an industry and you identify how many companies there are and how large these companies are. Okay? How many firms are there in an industry? A lot of firms, not too many firms. What expertise does it take to get in the business? How many companies are there doing what you're doing? Okay? What about the size? Are there 1 or 2 or 3 large companies that really dominate, and then the scraps are taken up by the remaining smaller firms? That will determine competition. Think of software. Okay? How fast is the market for the industry's products growing? Okay? And so that's really a function of the market share that has not yet been captured, and it's a function of what capabilities a product has. You might target a product or a service for one particular area and then find out that there are many other uses for that product and service. Okay? All right, are there high fixed cost firms out there that will slash prices in order to keep volumes working through their business? Okay, that's a question. How will firms react to an increase in the economy, economic growth, and to slowdowns in the economic growth? Firms that have a lot of property, plant, and equipment tend to cut prices in order to keep volumes running through their operations. Okay? Are there exit barriers? Meaning, how easy is it for a company to go out of business? Sometimes it's cheaper to stay in business and run a loss than it is to have to shut down and meet environmental regulations to clean up your area. Okay? Is the market big enough for the firms in the industry? Rivalry among competition. Is there enough business to go around? And frankly, there typically is enough business to go around. The marketplace tends to take care of their own. If managers do a really good job of assessing the marketplace before they get into business, and if they operate their businesses in an optimal way, then they will not get too large for the market, and there'll be enough business to go around. How is competition carried on? Is it carried on through price? Boy, that's an ugly way to compete. Through price, that means profit margins are going to be thin. What it means is that you are offering a product that is commoditized. It's easy to do, and everybody can provide it. Therefore, it's the low-cost provider that gets the most market share, and the low-cost provider is not going to make a good profit margin. Okay? And that's in contrast to product differentiation. And that is where there's a lot of engineering and creativity that goes into creating the products, and it there may be a smaller niche for a product like that, but you'll make a much higher profit margin because of the features and the quality that goes into your product. And y'all are going to get into this in a very big way when you take on your strategic policy class. You're going to have to make all these decisions about what market you want to be in and how you're going to design and market your products to meet that niche. Are you going to be a low-cost, no-frills, mass-marketed product, or are you going to be more of a highly engineered, highly specialized, high-price, lower sales volume operation? All right, what about the threats of new entrants? Are there barriers to entry into this business, or is it pretty easy for people to enter the business? And whenever you are assessing a business, whether you're going to buy the stock or whether you're thinking about buying the company, that is something you have to ask yourself. How easy is it for competitors to just jump into your business? Okay, barriers to entry include the financial requirements. Is it really expensive to get into your industry, your business, or can it be done relatively inexpensively? If it's done relatively inexpensively, there will be a lot of competitors who come into the business, into the industry. Are there economies of scale required to compete effectively? If there are, if the business requires a lot of property, plant, and equipment because there's some big competitors out there, then that is going to keep people from jumping into the business because they won't be able to compete on price because their costs will be much higher. All right, what about distribution channels? How easy is it? How available is it? How accessible are distribution channels? It's one thing to make a product. It's another thing to advertise a product, but it's yet another thing to get a product into the hands of the end user. Now, I will say that this has really changed. Retailers used to really control this process. You had to get shelf space in order to sell your product. That doesn't happen anymore. We've got the internet now, and so you can come up with a product and you can go directly to the consumers and the consumers can go directly to you. And so that frees up market space to a lot of people, a lot of businesses that otherwise in the past did not have access to the customer. You couldn't get it into the hands of the customer because you couldn't get it onto the shelves at retail companies. Okay? Are there technology barriers to entry? How difficult is it to create or to buy the technology you need to be in the business? Okay? How about the cost of switching products? Sometimes you can create a product or a service that is superior to what is already in the marketplace, but the time it takes and the cost it requires for a customer to make a change just keeps that customer from making that change. So that is the cost of switching. That's a real challenge. Okay? How about government regulation? Are there regulations that either limit competition or make it very difficult to get into the industry? For example, liquor stores. You can't just identify a location in a town and put in a liquor store. You have to apply for a permit. The Beverage and Alcohol Control Board in each state will only give out a certain number of permits. Some counties are dry. It is difficult to get into the liquor business. Okay? If you want to build a business, how available are the resources that you need, like labor? You're going to have to look around and make sure if you're going to build a big business, you're going to need people to populate that business. And I'll tell you right now that if you're in the trucking business, it is very difficult to find people who can drive your trucks. There is always a driver shortage in the industry. And I have a friend who runs two businesses here in Searcy. They're big businesses, and they can't find good people to work in those businesses. How about power? Is there adequate and cheap electricity and water and natural natural gas, or is it expensive? How about getting materials into the plant? Is there transportation, railroads, highways? How far away from your source of raw materials are you? Okay, so all these things keep people from getting into businesses. The higher the barriers to entry, the fewer the competitors will be in the industry, and the higher the industry profitability will be. The more competition you have, the lower the profitability will be. The less competition you have, the higher profitability you'll have. All right, how about the threat of substitute products? If you've got one or two products, you could get blown out of the water, folks. Okay? The existence of substitute products limits the prices that firms can charge. I'm thinking about the coal industry versus the natural gas industry. Both raw materials, coal and natural gas, are used by electricity producers to produce electricity. And so, if the coal producers try to charge too much for their coal, then electricity plants will switch over to natural gas and vice versa. So the threat of substitute products will put a lid on what someone can charge for their product or service. Okay? How close in function and in price are the substitute products? Well, I can tell you that natural gas and coal are very close in terms of their prices and in terms of how well they get the job done. Okay? What is the bargaining power of input suppliers? Okay? If you run an electricity plant and you're trying to buy natural gas, how many sources do you have to buy that natural gas? If there's only one pipeline within 100 miles of you, then chances are you're going to have a hard time getting a reasonable quote, because the one pipeline that's close to you knows they've got a monopoly, and they know that if you want natural gas, you're going to have to buy it from them. The more accessible input material is available, the less power these input suppliers have. Okay? So if input suppliers are concentrated and the access to resources is limited, suppliers can command premium prices, and that's probably going to lead to either low margins or high prices for the company that is using that input. I'm thinking about certain rare metals that are used in technology, and they're difficult to find, and countries and companies that have access to these rare metals can really charge a premium for them. Okay? All right, so if you're in an industry where input suppliers have a great deal of power, your profitability is going to be threatened. Okay? So these things can significantly change prospects and balance in an industry. Substitute products, technology, okay? If technology changes, you could be in big trouble. Regulation, supply of inputs. These are the things that we've just covered. So as you are considering the position of a company and of its stock, you must keep these things in mind before you buy that stock. All right, some of my friends over there, we're finished with chapter 11, and we'll move on to chapter 12 in the next clip. Until then, I bid you peace out. Shalom.